Priscila, which is one of the people that actually appeared on the video, to speak a little bit more about her work, and also talk about applied anthropology, and how she has been using it and how it can be used in her own work. So.
Hi everybody, my name is Priscila. So I think it's important to say first that I'm not an anthropologist, I'm a psychologist, and I was able to share a bit in this video. I study women in poverty. I'm studying an aspect about mental health in women in poverty. I'm from Latin America, I'm from Brazil, some place with a lot of social disequalities, and we live very close to us with a lot of very strong images every day, and it's impossible not to be impacted from this, you know. It's something that determined my choice to be a psychologist. And I started my work in Brazil, but just to study psychology was not enough. Then I decided to study philosophy, especially because of the political and ethical discussions that was very important for me. And then I started working in Brazil, and I started to develop social projects with women in Brazil. I worked as well in the public health system. It's very precarious as well. And then I started to develop social projects for my initiatives. In the beginning, I didn't know, to be very honest, exactly what I was doing, but I was in different communities. I would like to be involved. I would like to understand, not in this position as just to be a psychologist in a clinic. So then I decided to have experience, and I started in some slums, that's very common in Brazil, and then I was working in mental hospitals, I was with prisoners, I was in different contexts where we can see a lot of kinds of sufferings that are a specific kind of suffering that one psychologist in Brazil, her name is Bader Savaya, she says that it's ethical political suffering. It's not the kind of suffering that everybody feel like, of course we're suffering, and we know that suffering is part of life. But this is not a common suffering. It's a kind of suffering when we live this experience to live the experience about exclusion, you know. And I started to understand that was exactly with this kind of suffering that I would like to work with. And after Brazil, I came to live in Europe, and I started to develop some social projects here. I was working in France, in Dunkirk, with refugees in 2015. That was an important moment where around a lot of refugees came to Europe, and that moment was a moment as well that I started to open for study the suffering not only from my country, from where I come from, unfortunately to discover that the suffering exists in different parts of the world. And this started to open my mind. I was working with homeless women in Ireland as well, in Dublin. After this, I decided to go to Asia and to travel in poor countries. And my idea was to visit social projects that develop initiatives with these women. It was not just me to develop, but I would like to learn more. Then I was in different projects. I started in India, then I was in projects in Bangladesh, in Thailand, in Vietnam, and was another open to see the complexity of this kind of suffering. Then I was as well in Africa, in Kenya, working with women with And then I decided to do my master's in social interventions and innovation, and trying to thinking some way to confront this problem. Now I'm a social entrepreneur. I have a very small company, let's say, a social business, just to help me to try to take this topic as the topic of my life, you know, and this has helped me to structure my work, my intentions, and it's helped me to start to develop some narrative about the importance and how serious it is, this kind of suffering. Then I arrived in my master's, and then my supervisor suggested me to do some ethnography. Then I said, no, I'm here to develop one idea, you know. Then she said, no, you will come back and you will think about all that you lived. And I said, oh my gosh, really? You know, it was not my... I came from Brazil to study here because it was a master in social intervention that I had interest in. Then I said, so, okay, let's do it. I started reading about ethnography. Again, I didn't have experience with anthropology, but of course my practice was always in communities with people, and I always had this, I always take notes, and I always had like diaries, you know, I was always with a deep reading about, I was always totally involved. That this is one characteristic of some social entrepreneurs when you are a bit obsessive for your topic. And I was in this process, and I just discovered this in my master, that a kind of character, it's some skills, you know, to be social, because you are totally involved. Of course, this process was not just beautiful. I was sick during this process. I was mental sick as well. And I had difficult moments to see these all things. And then again, I started to write this ethnography. It was one of the most incredible experiences, because this changed a lot my view, changed a lot my interests. And so now I was studying about suffering. And it was exactly the moment that I stopped to study suffering, to start to study about well-being. There was the moment, was a turning point in my work, where I'm now that I'm in my PhD, studying post-colonialism, to understand that during long years, as a social psychologist, we always emphasize the suffering. We are always worried to understand the suffering, and unfortunately, of course, the suffering exists, and it's super important to understand about traumas and sufferings. But I want to study about happiness. I want to study about how to produce well-being. It was a very turning point. And this is why, because I'm learning that this view that I had was a bit a colonial view as well. To see the subaltern people always in this position as a suffering people. Because during these last more than 10 years, 12 years working with these women, I saw a lot of people smiling as well. It was always difficult for me to understand that they're suffering, but they are in love, but they are happy, but they are poor, but they are party, they're doing party, but you know, and it's my research at the moment to study what I'm saying, ethical political well-being, how to produce this view that not represent again and again the subaltern people always in the same colonial view that they are just suffering people, or I think we cannot we cannot work with poverty, and if we maintain always the subaltern people in the same position that they are during the histories, you know. It's not so easy. I don't know how to do it, but I'm trying to understand better this. So in this article, and I want to always say again and again that it was very cool to be part of this project, to share a bit about my trajectory, because as a research, I'm not only academic people. It's very hard to be academic because I like to be in society, I like to be It's really hard to be research. But it's so different that we transformed this article in podcast, or someone like draw my article. This was so different, and I feel much more. This is the way that I trust that we need to communicate our research, you know, because we are always in conference and congress, very serious, and I think this is how we can. I think society can really listen to us, and we cannot just stay in our bubble and talk in universities, blah blah blah. And this is, I think, was very innovative for me, and I'm very proud to be part of this project. And now I don't want to take so much time reading my art. Talk about the article. If someone interested, will be in the website. But just in this article, I was sharing exactly a bit this experience during my master dissertation, where I had this question about what's for my trajectory could be useful for people to develop social projects as well, with focus on women and in social vulnerability. And this was my let's say my research question in my master's. And then I realized that was my experience in social projects that was something that I could share. And then it was exactly the topic of my article. And I think something important to say is that we don't write some autoethnography just to talk about ourselves and how amazing you are. You know, of course, it's not reason to write autoethnography. We just write when we feel that we have something to say and something about something that can impact the society. This is why our writings need to be very evocative, you know, emotional or intellectual, but we need to provoke or invite really people to do something. You know, this is the most difficult part, I think, for me to write this autoethnography, because when after it is reading that people could exactly start to do something in the world, you know, and then in this article I was sharing a bit my view about what this means. It's difficult to say women in poverty because there are a lot of women in different parts of the world with different situations and complexities. But I was sharing a bit the important perspective about exclusion. This was before my PhD, and probably I was able to write something different. It's always like this, that we write something that we want to change and then we want to do different, but in this moment I was writing about the social exclusion, and then I was trying to invite people that wanted to develop social projects that don't need to be only people that are, of course, maybe a lot of people here are people that knows to develop one project, but there are a lot of people in society that they don't know, and it's very important that they have little thoughts just to know how to start to do. Because of course, we can just start without so much structure, let's say, but it makes a big difference when we have some basis. And I think this was a big difference that I was able to see during my trajectory about some projects that they exist, they are beautiful, but they don't produce impact enough. And this is not enough just to think static about the project. I think we need to be attentive for some specific topics. This is why I suggest we always think about these interventions with arts, with some specific focus. And this is why I want to say a bit about arts. I'm not an artist, but my mother, she's an artist, so I'm daughter from some artist. So art was always present in my life from my mom, inside my home. And I basically received this art education. And now I develop social projects, always involved with arts. Especially when we think about mental health, arts is something super important. And I think it's not all kinds of arts. We are not talking about conceptual arts. We are talking about collaborative kinds of arts, or we are talking about participative practice, you know. But we need to thinking about two specific topics. That's thinking arts related with power and domination, and how we can develop community arts with focus in social rights. This is why I like so much some conception about sharing the creative act to produce art. And it means can be artists, people that they are not artists, can be really a co-creation with people with different views and perspectives. But always everybody with this political purpose. And the suggestion is this paradigm about the creative citizen. And it means we can involve different kinds of topics. For example, music, poetry, photography, theater, dance, performance, collage. Yeah, there are a lot of ways how we can produce art. But what's important is always we thinking about, for example, anti-racist practice, anti-colonial practice. You know, how we are able to think about anti-capitalistic arts, how we can how we can change this social science. We use arts, but we have more to say with our work. Again, I saw a lot of beautiful things, but that was not involved in the community, and the community was not totally part of the process, and create a bit distance. And what I wanted to suggest from what I was able to see is the importance of this kind of arts to be with these people, and not only for them or for others to see, but always to create this engaged society to be part of this project. I don't have more time. I just want to share, if someone has interest in read the article, then I will say about this process, the step-by-step with how to develop a social project, just to give a bit support. But the idea is more to invite people to do it. That's it.
Thank you so much, Priscila, for sharing your story and how it was forward. And thank you again for agreeing to participate with us.